My wife begged me to open our marriage so she could sleep with the UPS guy, and like an idiot, I said yes thinking it would save us. But instead I watched our perfect 6-year relationship turn into a nightmare that ended with police involvement, a restraining order, and me losing everything I thought was solid in my life. I'm Alex, 29 years old, and this is how I destroyed my marriage by trying to save it. Looking back now, I can see every red flag I ignored, every warning sign I dismissed because I was too scared to face reality. But in the moment, I genuinely believed I was doing the right thing. 6 months ago, I had everything figured out, or at least I thought I did. Maria and I had been together since college, moved in together after 2 years, got married at 25, bought a house in a decent neighborhood with a backyard and a 2-car garage. Our families loved us. Her mom called me her favorite son-in-law, even though I was her only son-in-law. My parents treated Maria like she was their own daughter, and our friends constantly told us we were relationship goals. We had stable jobs, we traveled twice a year, we talked about starting a family next spring, and honestly, I thought we were on track for that boring, happy life everyone pretends they don't want but secretly craves. Then Tyler showed up. Tyler was a UPS delivery guy who started showing up at Maria's office building around March. At first, she mentioned him maybe once a month, something casual like how the delivery guy was funny or how he always remembered her name. I didn't think anything of it because why would I? Right, delivery people talk to everyone. But then it became once a week, then twice a week. Then suddenly she was mentioning Tyler almost every single day. She'd come home and tell me about their conversations, how he was training for a marathon, how he was taking online classes, how he had this crazy story about a dog that chased him down a street. I started noticing she was staying late at the office on days when she knew packages were coming. She'd check the tracking numbers obsessively and make sure she was at her desk right when Tyler was scheduled to arrive. Her coworkers started teasing her about it, and she'd laugh it off, but I could see something shifting in her eyes when she talked about him. The way she'd light up when his name came up, the way she'd check her appearance in the mirror before leaving for work on delivery days, the way she'd casually mention what he was wearing or what cologne he used. I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was just being friendly, but deep down I knew something had changed. Then one night in late June, Maria sat me down on our couch and told me something that made my stomach drop. She said Tyler had told her he was interested in her, not just friendly interested, but romantically interested, and she admitted she felt something too. She kept saying, "I've never cheated on you. I would never do that. But I can't stop thinking about him, and I don't know what to do." I sat there frozen because what do you even say to that? I asked her what she wanted from me, if she wanted to leave, if she wanted a divorce. But she said no, she loved me. She didn't want to lose what we had. But the way she said it felt empty, like she was reading lines from a script. Over the next few weeks, Maria became a completely different person. She'd stare at her phone during dinner. She'd go to bed early without saying goodnight. She stopped looking me in the eyes when we talked. We'd always been the couple that communicated about everything. But suddenly there was this massive wall between us, and I had no idea how to climb over it. She was distant, cold, like her body was in our house, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Then one Saturday morning in July, she asked me the question that changed everything. We were having coffee in the kitchen, and she just casually said, "What do you think about open relationships?" I almost choked on my drink. I asked her if she was serious, and she nodded, then started talking about how some couples do it successfully, how it doesn't mean the end of love, how it's just physical and doesn't change emotional connection. I told her I needed time to think. For a week I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at work. I felt like my entire world was collapsing and I didn't know how to stop it. Part of me wanted to say no, pack my bags, and walk away, but another part of me was terrified of losing her after 6 years together. I kept thinking maybe this was just a phase. Maybe if I let her explore this, she'd realize what we had was worth keeping. I talked to my best friend about it without giving names, and he looked at me like I'd lost my mind, told me that agreeing to this would be the biggest mistake of my life, but I didn't listen. I researched open relationships online, read stories about couples who made it work, convinced myself we could be one of the success stories. I was grasping at straws, looking for any reason to believe this wouldn't end in disaster. So I told her yes, but only with rules. We had to tell each other before seeing anyone else. We had to be honest about everything. We had to use protection, and either of us could stop this arrangement at any moment if it got too painful. She agreed immediately, almost too quickly, like she'd been waiting for me to say yes. 2 days later, Maria went to see Tyler. She told me she was meeting him at his apartment. She'd be back by 11, and she walked out the door like it was the most normal thing in the world. I sat on the couch for maybe 10 minutes before I couldn't take it anymore. So I drove to a bar across town and drank until I couldn't think straight. I came home at 2 in the morning and found Maria already asleep in our bed. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened, made breakfast, asked about my day, but something in her had shifted again. She seemed lighter, happier, but in a way that didn't include me. Over the next month, Maria saw Tyler 3 more times, and each time I felt a piece of myself die. She'd come home late, take a shower immediately, and avoid talking about details even though that was part of our agreement. I realized she was breaking the rules, but I didn't call her out because I was too afraid of what that conversation would lead to. Then I decided if she could do this, so could I. I downloaded a dating app, something I never thought I'd do while married, and within a week I matched with a woman named Jessica. She was 25, a nurse who worked night shifts, and she had this easy smile that made me feel human again. We met for coffee, then dinner, then I spent an evening at her apartment. When I told Maria I was seeing someone, her face went pale. She said, "Wait, I thought this was just theoretical for you." And I reminded her that she opened this door. That's when everything started falling apart faster than either of us could control. Maria's reaction to me seeing Jessica was something I'll never forget because the woman who begged me for an open marriage suddenly couldn't handle me actually using it. The night I told her about Jessica, Maria sat on our bed with tears streaming down her face saying, "I thought you'd just say yes and never actually do it." And I realized she wanted permission to cheat without calling it cheating while I stayed home like a loyal dog waiting for her to come back. I told her that wasn't how this worked, that she opened the door and I walked through it just like she did, and she looked at me like I'd betrayed her even though she was the one sleeping with the delivery guy. Jessica was everything Maria wasn't in that moment. She was stable, drama-free, and honest about what she wanted. We'd meet at her apartment after her shifts, talk for hours about normal things like movies and work drama, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. She knew about my situation. I was upfront about still being married, and she said she wasn't looking for anything serious anyway because nursing school had destroyed her last relationship. It was easy, it was simple, and that simplicity felt like oxygen after drowning. But Maria couldn't stand it. She started asking where I was going every time I left the house, when I'd be back, who I was texting when my phone buzzed. I reminded her about our agreement, about how we both had freedom now. But she'd snap back with, "That's different. Tyler and I have a connection." Like her affair was somehow more valid than mine. She wanted me to check in constantly, send updates, tell her every detail, but when I asked her the same questions, she'd get defensive and say I was being controlling. The double standard was insane. I'd tell her honestly when I was going to see Jessica. I'd say, "I'll be at her place tonight. I'll be home by midnight." But Maria started lying. She'd say she was working late when I could see her location was at Tyler's apartment complex. She'd claim she was having dinner with her sister, but her sister would call our house looking for her. She'd make up excuse after excuse and expect me to just accept it. One night in late August, I came home around 11 and found Maria sitting in the dark living room, just staring at the wall. I asked if she was okay, and she said, "How can you just go be with her like it doesn't hurt me?" And I lost it. I told her she didn't get to play victim when she started this whole thing, when she was the one who couldn't stop thinking about Tyler, when she was the one who destroyed our marriage because a guy in a brown uniform smiled at her. She screamed that I didn't understand, that what she had with Tyler was real connection while I was just using Jessica for revenge, and I walked out of the room before I said something I couldn't take back. The next few weeks were torture because we were living like roommates who hated each other. We'd pass in the hallway without speaking, eat meals at different times, sleep in separate rooms because our schedules for seeing other people never lined up. I'd be getting ready to go out, and she'd be coming home, or she'd be leaving, and I'd be making dinner alone. Our house felt like a hotel where two strangers happened to have keys. The worst part was watching our routines disappear. The little things that made us a couple just vanished overnight. We used to watch TV together every evening. Now the living room sat empty. We used to cook Sunday breakfast together. Now I'd find her gone before I woke up. Even our dog seemed confused, looking between us like he knew something was broken but couldn't understand what. Friends started noticing too. We'd get invited to parties and show up separately, make excuses about work schedules, but everyone could see we were falling apart. Then Tyler started getting weird. Maria came home one Tuesday night shaking, and when I asked what happened, she said Tyler had shown up at her office when he wasn't supposed to be working. He'd waited by her car for 20 minutes just to talk to her, told her he needed to see her more often, said their arrangement wasn't enough anymore. She looked genuinely scared, and I felt this sick twist in my stomach because I realized we'd let a stranger into our lives, and had no idea who he really was. I told her to cut him off, that this was getting dangerous, but she said it wasn't that simple, that Tyler was emotional and she needed to handle it carefully. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler's behavior got worse. He started texting Maria at all hours, even during times he knew we'd be together, asking where she was and why she wasn't responding. She showed me some of the messages and they were unhinged. Stuff like, "I know you're thinking about me right now," and "We're meant to be together, you just don't see it yet." She blocked his number, but he started calling from different phones. He'd drive by our house slowly at night. I saw his truck 3 times in 1 week parked down the street. Maria was terrified but also refused to go to the police because she was worried about her job finding out. She worked at a corporate office building, and having a delivery driver stalk her because of an affair would look awful. She'd probably lose her position or at least get demoted. Her boss already didn't like her much, and this would give him ammunition. Meanwhile, Jessica and I kept seeing each other. But even that started feeling wrong because my marriage was imploding and dragging everyone down with it. She could tell I was stressed, that I was barely present when we hung out. And one night she said, "You need to figure out your situation because this isn't fair to either of us." She was right. I was using her as an escape from the disaster at home, and she deserved better than being someone's coping mechanism. Around mid-September, Maria's parents got involved, and that made everything 10 times worse. Her mom called me screaming about how I'd ruined her daughter's life by agreeing to an open marriage, saying what kind of husband lets his wife see other men, completely ignoring that Maria had begged for this arrangement. Her dad sent me a long email about responsibility and commitment, like I was the one who'd broken our vows. I tried explaining that Maria had asked for this, that I tried to save our marriage by agreeing, but they didn't want to hear it. In their minds, I was the villain and Maria was the victim. Classic Reddit family dynamics. Tyler escalated. He started showing up at Maria's office building multiple times a day, not even pretending to deliver packages anymore. Her coworkers noticed. Her boss pulled her aside asking why a UPS driver was harassing her, and she had to admit they'd been involved. The gossip spread through her office like wildfire. People whispered when she walked by, and she came home crying, saying her professional reputation was destroyed. I almost felt bad for her until I remembered she'd chosen this path knowing the risks. One Friday night, I was at Jessica's apartment when Maria called me 15 times in a row. I finally answered and she was hysterical, saying Tyler was outside our house sitting in his truck, refusing to leave. I told her to call the police and she said she already did, but they told her he wasn't technically doing anything illegal by parking on a public street. I drove home immediately, and when I pulled up, I saw his truck parked 3 houses down. I walked over and told him to leave, and he looked at me with this blank expression and said, "She loves me, not you. You're just holding her back." I told him if he didn't leave, I'd call the cops myself, and he finally drove away, but I knew this wasn't over. That night with Tyler sitting outside our house was the beginning of the end, and what happened over the next 8 weeks made me realize some doors once opened can never be closed again. Maria didn't sleep that whole night. She kept getting up to check the windows, and I heard her crying in the guest room at 4 in the morning. The next day, Tyler showed up at her office again, but this time he followed her to her car in the parking garage and blocked her in with his truck. She called me panicking, and I told her to stay in her car with the doors locked while I called the police. When the cops arrived, Tyler acted completely normal, said he was just trying to talk to her, that they'd been seeing each other, and he didn't understand why she was suddenly scared of him. The officers told him to leave her alone and warned him about harassment, but legally they couldn't do much because he hadn't threatened her or touched her. Maria's boss called her into his office the following Monday and told her the situation with Tyler was creating a hostile work environment. Other employees were uncomfortable, clients had witnessed the parking garage incident, and the company's insurance was concerned about liability. He didn't fire her, but he strongly suggested she take a leave of absence until things settled down, which was basically a nice way of saying her career there was finished. She came home that afternoon and just sat on the couch staring at nothing, and I realized she'd lost everything chasing something that was never real. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler's behavior got completely out of control. He started calling our house phone, which we barely used anymore, leaving long rambling messages about how Maria belonged with him and how I was manipulating her. He created fake social media accounts to message her after she blocked him everywhere. He sent letters to our house, pages and pages of handwritten notes talking about their connection and their future together. Maria was having panic attacks daily, couldn't eat, couldn't focus, and I watched her mentally fall apart in real time. She'd jump at every sound, check the locks on doors and windows multiple times a night, and I'd find her sitting in the dark at 3 in the morning, just staring out the window. The Maria I married was completely gone, replaced by this anxious shell of a person who flinched when her phone buzzed. I felt this weird mix of anger at her for causing this mess and genuine concern because nobody deserves to live in fear like that. Her hands would shake when she opened the mail, terrified of finding another letter from Tyler. Her sister finally convinced her we needed a restraining order. We went to the courthouse with printed screenshots, phone logs, copies of the letters, and the police reports from when officers had warned him. The judge granted a temporary order immediately and scheduled a hearing for a permanent one. When Tyler got served with the papers, he lost it completely. He started posting on Facebook about how Maria had seduced him and then abandoned him, how I was an abusive husband who controlled her, just absolutely insane stuff that made him look deranged. Maria's friends and family saw the posts, people from her office saw them, and the humiliation was total. At the permanent restraining order hearing, Tyler showed up with no lawyer and tried to represent himself, which went exactly as badly as you'd expect. He told the judge that Maria had pursued him first, that she'd given him her personal number, that they'd been in love, and I'd forced her to end things. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at Tyler rambling about fate and destiny, and granted the permanent order without hesitation. Tyler was banned from coming within 500 feet of Maria, our house, or her workplace. But by then the damage was irreversible. Maria's leave of absence turned into a resignation because she couldn't face going back to that office. She couldn't handle the gossip and the stares and everyone knowing what happened. She moved in with her sister temporarily because being in our house gave her panic attacks, too many memories of Tyler driving by or sitting outside. We tried having one conversation about saving our marriage, and it lasted maybe 5 minutes before we both realized there was nothing left to save. She destroyed our foundation chasing someone who turned out to be unstable. I'd stopped loving her somewhere between the lies and the double standards, and we were just two people who'd hurt each other beyond repair. We filed for divorce in late October. The process was surprisingly smooth because neither of us wanted to fight. We just wanted it over. We agreed to sell the house and split everything 50-50, no alimony because we'd both worked, no kids to complicate custody. Our families were devastated. Her parents still blamed me. My parents tried to stay neutral, but I could tell they were relieved I was getting out. Friends picked sides, some people ghosted both of us entirely, and our entire social circle just disintegrated. The wedding gifts we'd received 4 years ago got divided up in the most depressing way possible. I took the kitchen stuff, she took the bedroom furniture, and we both avoided looking at the photo albums sitting in boxes nobody wanted to touch. Our wedding photos were still hanging in her parents' house, and her mom refused to take them down out of spite, like keeping them up would somehow prove I was the bad guy in all of this. Jessica and I stopped seeing each other around the same time Maria moved out. She sat me down one evening and said, "You need time to heal, not a rebound." And she was absolutely right. I'd been using her as a band-aid for a wound that needed surgery, and she deserved someone who was emotionally available. We hugged goodbye, and I haven't talked to her since, though I hope she's doing well, because she was kind to me when I didn't deserve kindness. The house sold in December, faster than expected because the market was good. I took my half of the profit and moved into a small apartment closer to my job, something simple with 1 bedroom and no memories. Maria found work at a different company in a nearby city, took a pay cut, but needed a fresh start. We signed the final divorce papers 2 days before Christmas, sitting in a lawyer's office barely looking at each other. And just like that, 6 years of marriage ended with signatures on paper. Tyler violated the restraining order once in January, showed up at Maria's sister's house looking for her, and got arrested. He spent a weekend in jail and finally seemed to get the message because we haven't heard from him since. Last I heard through mutual friends he moved to a different state, though I don't know if that's true or just a rumor. I spent the first few months after the divorce in therapy trying to process everything. My therapist asked me if I regretted agreeing to the open marriage, and honestly I don't know. Part of me thinks if I'd said no from the start, Maria would have cheated anyway, or just left me, and at least this way I knew what was happening. Another part of me wonders if setting that boundary would have woken her up, made her realize what she was about to lose. But I'll never know, and it doesn't matter anymore. What I learned is that some people will ask you to sacrifice your dignity and comfort for their happiness, and they'll act surprised when you ask for the same consideration. Maria wanted me to sit at home being the loyal husband while she explored her fantasy, and the moment I found someone who made me feel valued again, she couldn't handle it. She wanted the safety of marriage with the excitement of an affair, and when she realized she couldn't have both, she chose neither and lost everything. Tyler turned out to be exactly what he looked like from the outside. Some guy who thought delivering packages to a married woman meant they had a cosmic connection. He wasn't a villain. He was just pathetic and unstable, someone who built a fantasy in his head and couldn't accept reality. Maria's career suffered. Her mental health collapsed, and she spent months undoing the damage from a few hours of validation from a stranger. I'm doing okay now. It's been almost a year since everything fell apart. I date casually, nothing serious, and I'm honest with everyone that I'm not ready for commitment. I moved into a better apartment, got a promotion at work, started going to the gym regularly. My parents and I are closer than ever, and I've built new friendships with people who don't know anything about the disaster that was my marriage. Sometimes I drive past the house Maria and I bought together and feel nothing, which is probably the healthiest sign of all. If there's any lesson from this whole nightmare, it's that opening a marriage to fix problems is like setting your house on fire to kill a spider. Technically it works, but you're left standing in the ashes wondering why you thought it was a good idea. Some doors should stay closed, some boundaries exist for a reason, and some people will only realize what they had after they've destroyed it completely. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.